With Shorekeeper getting a shorter than usual banner, Zani will arrive pretty quickly, and while much of her kit is still being fine-tuned, there's enough info from beta to get a pretty good grasp on how she should be built. In this video, we'll be going over what echoes you should be prioritizing, the nuanced way her kit works, and just how much better Phoebe will make Zani compared to other options. Just for a quick disclaimer, due to the calculations here being based on stats and data from beta, and since this is probably the least amount of information we've received for a beta character before their launch, make sure you keep this in mind, as some parts of her kit are likely to change at this point. I believe this is due to the upcoming anniversary and the shorter than usual banner this time around. So make sure you check the comments, as I will post if anything major changes in her kit that I cover in this video. Zani is a very unique character, as the core part of her kit revolves around Spectro Frazzle. Now if you're unfamiliar with Spectro Frazzle, to put it simply, it's a damage over time effect that certain characters can inflict on enemies that can currently stack up to 10 times. This effect occurs one time in approximately every 3 seconds, and each time it occurs, a stack will fall off. Certain characters' abilities can add more stacks than others, and some can add unique effects to Spectro Frazzle, like Rover's ability to prevent stacks from falling off for a period of time. Each additional stack will increase the damage it deals. The main factors that influence Spectro Frazzle's damage are the Resonator's level and the enemy's resistance. Now the damage you deal with Spectro Frazzle isn't going to break any records. But Zani puts a new spin on what Spectro Frazzle is used for. Zani converts Spectro Frazzle into Scorching Ember, which instead of doing damage over time, it does damage immediately based on how many stacks you hit the enemy with. You can still visibly see the stacks inflicted on the enemy, just like Spectro Frazzle, but instead of capping at 10, can accumulate to a much higher amount. Scorching Ember is still considered Spectro Frazzle, so the Eternal Radiant set effects can still be activated. Spectro Frazzle converts to Scorching Ember at a 1-to-1 ratio, so 1 Spectro Frazzle stack equals 1 Scorching Ember stack. When accumulating these stacks, Zani also gains Blaze for each stack of Spectro Frazzle inflicted, which is currently estimated to be around a 1-to-5 conversion ratio. The reason Blaze is important is because Zani will consume it to add an additional multiplier to her Forte hits after she casts her Liberation that consume this Blaze and increase the multiplier based on how much Blaze she consumes. In other words, more Spectro Frazzle stacks equals more Blaze that will give her more damage inside of her Liberation. Most of Zani's damage is done after she casts her Liberation that will make her enter a state called Inferno mode. This damage gets a multiplier boost, extra damage based on how much Blaze she consumes per hit, and allows this damage to not only scale with heavy attack damage, but also Spectro Frazzle. The reason this is important is because Zani can leverage Phoebe's unique 100% Spectro Frazzle damage amplification to get a massive damage boost for her primary source of damage. Now if you have Phoebe's weapon Luminous Hymn, this becomes an even bigger increase in damage, since Phoebe's weapon at Refinement 1 will give the active character, after using her outro, an additional 30% Spectro Frazzle damage amplification, giving Zani a total of 130% damage amplification by utilizing Phoebe's support form and outroing with her. Phoebe also applies Spectro Frazzle very quickly, allowing her to ramp up Zani's Blaze faster than any other Resonator. Now just to showcase a quick damage comparison of how much of a difference Phoebe makes for Zani compared to Rover, you can see that there really is a huge difference. This is mostly due to Rover lacking any sort of damage amplification for Zani to utilize, although to be honest, Zani's damage is pretty solid with Rover due to her multipliers being pretty high. Phoebe ends up being a whopping 52% damage increase over Rover. However, this does include Phoebe's signature weapon, which is very niche. As for without Phoebe's weapon, and using the free-to-play weapon we got from the fishing event Ocean's Gift at R5, the damage difference is still quite large. But without Phoebe's additional 30% Spectro Frazzle damage amplification, we're now going to sit at around a 33% damage increase. For the last test, we're comparing Rocha's signature weapon, Tragic Comedy, to Zani's signature. The damage difference is quite large, as currently Zani's weapon gives a 50% Spectro Frazzle damage amplification when casting your Liberation at R1. This results in about a 24% damage increase for Zani's signature over the next best option. Now for a quick TLDR, in terms of priority, having Phoebe on your account will have the biggest impact on Zani's performance, followed by her weapon and then Phoebe's weapon. As far as Zani's Echo set, it's going to be pretty simple, as Eternal Radiance will work perfectly for her. There's also a pretty odd main Echo to use, and that will be the 3-cost Capitanius. Capitanius is a pretty solid Echo that buffs heavy and spectro damage. This is better for Zani since the majority of her damage will be coming from her heavy attacks, but as you can see here, the damage difference is quite minor. So if you already farmed a set without Capitanius, don't stress too much about the damage difference. Now as for where to farm for Capitanius, you can find them in these locations circled in blue. While these aren't 100% drop rate like during this night, they are still important to farm, but there is the weekly one marked here that you can farm, but for a fair warning, he is pretty durable. As for a second 3-cost that you can farm an abundance of, there is Rage Against the Statue that can be Eternal Radiance and Gusts of Welkin. As for where they are located, you can find them here in Riccioli Islands, where there is quite an abundance of them. You can also consider farming Diurnus Night, since it can be Eternal Radiance and has a 100% drop rate, but also belongs to the Tidebreaking Courage set, so I find the other two better to farm for this upcoming patch. You can also farm a bit more of the golems in the Vault Underground, but as a fair warning, this area is a bit more difficult to navigate. If you're running Capitanius as your main Echo, you're still going to want to have a Morning Ix on the team so that you can get the extra crit stats. Now between crit rate and crit damage still comes out on top, even with Zani's weapon giving you crit damage, due to Eternal Radiance giving you an extra 20 crit rate. This is contingent on having decent crit rate rolls on your Echoes, so of course if you don't have good crit rate, having it as your main stat will work just fine. Between having a single attack percent 3-cost and double Spectro 3-cost, double Spectro will be better, since it will provide a nice increase since Zani doesn't have a lot of damage bonus in her kit. As for her substat priority, since Zani is a crit scaling character, you're going to want to prioritize crit rate and crit damage, followed by heavy attack damage and attack percent. For the last substat, energy recharge will be fine to help make her rotation smoother. Zani is going to be a really strong resonator, especially if you have the tools being Phoebe and Zani's signature weapon. Phoebe's weapon can also make a huge difference in her teams. If you meet these 3 conditions, she will have some of the highest single target damage in the game. So far, Zani seems to gain the most from having a specific 5-star resonator being Phoebe on your account, but will still be a solid DPS even without her. If you liked the video, please leave a like and subscribe, as I will be making a more thorough guide in the future for Zani, and I will be making one for Chacona as well. And thank you for watching.